Have you ever wondered what it is that makes you you? Why are you experiencing your life through your mind and body and not through your siblings or your best friends or Leonardo da Vinci's or somebody else from a different place and time? What if you actually do experience your life through all different bodies and people, but you just don't remember it? Hello, namaste, hola, guten tag, ni hao, bonjour, and hello in all the beautiful ways people greet around the world. Welcome to the third episode of Sip of the Iceberg. And today we are going to talk about consciousness, one of my favorite topics. Okay, let's start the topic with a very simple question. Is your brain just a part of you, or is you and your brain one and the same thing? Of course, anatomically, your brain is an organ of your body, but let's approach this philosophically because consciousness is as much philosophy as it is science. Philosophers and neuroscientists have been trying to decipher consciousness for centuries, but we still have no idea what exactly it is. Everyone seems to have a different theory and definition of consciousness, and we haven't been able to come up with a definition that is consistent, unambiguous, and that most people can agree on, because we don't actually properly understand it. When I was in my early teenage years, I was getting into books that introduced me to the fascinating world of science, philosophy, and literature. I was reading biographies of scientists and renowned personalities, and that's when I came across Rene Descartes. Of all things about Descartes, his famous quote, cogito ergo sum, which translates to I think, therefore I am, stuck with me. It wasn't because I was enlightened by it, but because actually thought it was a stupid quote. To my aged teenage mind, it was just a meaningless, vague quote that got so much fame just because some renowned person said it. It's funny to think about. At that time, I thought to myself that if someday I become world famous, I will say something stupid, cryptic, and meaningless, and people will be wondering about the meaning behind it for centuries and even maybe interpret it as something profound. It wasn't until my late teen years that I started taking keen interest in philosophy and started pondering about consciousness and came across Rene Descartes one more time. With some reading into his philosophical notions, I came to understand that his famous quote was not just a stupid combination of vague words put together. It was instead a very thought provoking philosophical idea. And I came to understand that Descartes believed that everything we assume to be true can be doubted, which led him to question his own existence. But then he realized that if he did not exist, then he would not be questioning his own existence. Hence, he concluded that he must exist because he is capable of thinking. Descartes also believed in mind body dualism, also known as Cartesian dualism, which basically suggests that the mind and body are two separate things. Therefore, a mind could still exist without a body. Hence, his conclusion, anything that thinks has existence. I think, therefore, I am. Descartes is considered very important in the field of study of the mind because he is known to be the pioneer of a systematic approach to study the consciousness and mind. Even today, his ideas still have a very substantial influence on philosophy and the study of the mind. Personally, I don't believe in mind body dualism, but as a philosophical thought experiment, I find it very fascinating as it makes you wonder about the bizarre and almost paradoxical nature of the mind. What is consciousness? In simple terms, it is an individual's awareness of themselves and the world around them. Take yourself as an example. You know about your own existence, your feelings, thoughts, memories, sensations of your body. Furthermore, you are also aware of the physical world around you, like people, object, air, temperature, space, and the effects of environment on yourself. Does this mean all living creatures are conscious? The honest answer is we don't know because we are not even sure what constitutes as consciousness exactly. Most scientists believe that living beings without a centralized nervous system, like bacteria, fungi, plants, etc., are non sentient, and they apparently operate primarily on instincts and reactions to the physical stimuli, like bacteria moving toward the nutrient gradient, plants leaves growing towards the sunlight, and the roots towards the groundwater. Whereas sentient beings are believed to operate through complex system with millions of levels, several layers of awareness. But also keep in mind that recent studies have also revealed that even plants and fungi could have more complex neurobiology than previously believed. That being said, where do you think consciousness emerges from? Why does it even exist in the first place? It might sound like a simple question, but the deeper you dig, the more baffling it gets. The obvious answer would be that consciousness stems from our brain, our central nervous system, and its purpose is probably to help us better navigate the world to increase our chances of survival. But this assumption raises more questions than it actually answers. So, does this mean that you and your brain are one and the same thing? What I mean by you in quotes is the subjective feeling of self or individuality that you experience. Like when you say, I like chocolate ice cream, what is that I referring to? Are you referring to your tongue? Are you referring to your brain or your physical body as a whole? Or are you referring to the abstract concept of your individuality, including both your mind and the body? If consciousness stems from the brain, then does that mean we don't control our brains? But instead, the brain controls the abstract mind body experience we call I, me, or myself, maybe? Or is it really one and the same thing? And how does it even work? The short answer is we have a very general idea, but we still don't fully understand the nuances of the body, mind, and how they are connected, which gives rise to the subjective experience of individuality. The human brain has 100 billion neurons, each neuron connected to 10,000 other neurons. Sitting on your shoulders is the most complicated object in the known universe. A quote by Michio Kaku. The human brain is an extremely complex organ capable of extraordinary feats beyond our conscious control and comprehension. It is more than just an organic computer made out of meat. In fact, it is a very complex and mysterious organ with many layers of awareness and complexity. On the surface is your active awareness, which is like the default awareness we all feel most of the time. You know, like asking a supermarket employee to locate the nearest restroom or looking at both sides of the road before crossing, even when it's a one way road, or reaching for your water bottle when you eat a salty snack. And there is also something like inner awareness, where you internalize and kind of talk to your mind like gossiping with your best friend. This can be realized as an inner monologue for some people, where you literally talk inside your head. For others, it could be something more abstract and symbolic, such as through feelings and mental imagery. Then there is your subconsciousness. This is like the background processes and notifications in a smartphone. You know, how you don't always see the operating system constantly checking for emails, categorizing them into spam advertisements or as something important, but they are still happening in the background and only relevant information is shown to you. Our subconscious is something similar. We are not always aware of it, but it is always there affecting us in some ways we don't even realize. Like when you drive your regular route from work to home, you might not even remember that driving experience unless there was something noticeable happening on the way back home. You probably have thought about it like, how did I even make it back home alive when I was completely zoned out on the whole drive back home? Or remembering something from your childhood you have not remembered ever before when you're looking at old photos, or something as important as breathing. You aren't really aware that you are breathing until you actually think about it, and then you start to kind of breathe manually for a few seconds. It is strange, right? Subconsciousness is where most of our habitual patterns, memories, and emotions are stored. Then there is the unconscious layer, like the BIOS or ROM of a computer, if you are into computers. You can also think of it like the people who make movies that you don't see on the screen, like directors, cameramen, artists who work on VFX and post productions, set and costume designers, etc. This is the layer that is not usually accessible to our subjective experience. This includes autonomous body functions such as heartbeat, digestion, kidney functions, etc., which are beyond our voluntary control. It also includes our instincts and reflexes, which are basically like shoot first, ask questions later. When you accidentally touch a hot plate, you don't really think, oopsie, it's an extremely hot plate, I touched it. If I don't pull my hand back immediately, it's gonna burn them. I won't be able to play video games for days. You pull your hand back even before you realize what happened. Then the realization and the oopsie feeling only comes after. By the way, these aren't like hard and fast categories of our mind. This is just an arbitrary classifications, but I believe most psychologists would generally agree with it. Now let's dial the discussion more towards a neurological and biological perspective. Most of what the brain does is not even our conscious choice. As we discussed earlier, the brain controls all our body parts and maintains autonomous bodily functions like heartbeat and digestion, most of which are completely beyond our voluntary control. It is also responsible for forming new memories and changing the older ones, which is also mostly out of our conscious control. The brain also sometimes buries memories so deeply in our minds that we cannot access them under normal circumstances. In fact, our memories are very volatile and unreliable. Our memories keep changing as we experience new things in life. For example, you might have a vivid memory watching Tom and Jerry while you were 5. Maybe you remember wearing a black shirt and black pants. Maybe you remember eating cookies while it was raining heavily outside. But was it really Tom and Jerry or some other cartoon that you don't even remember existed when you were a kid? You could have been wearing a yellow onesie and eating candy, and the weather outside could have been barely gloomy. It is likely that you could have misremembered it because over the years, your brain might have replaced aspects of it with different memories. Bizarrely enough, sometimes we even remember things that might have never happened because your brain could mistake a scene from maybe a movie you watched, a memory from a dream, or even a story told by your parents as your actual memory. Our memories aren't like video recordings, it is more of a reconstruction of bits and pieces of information from past experiences. Think of it like walking through a complex network of unmarked trails. to find a specific lake or vantage point. If a section of the trail is missing, your brain simply fills the gap. Just as an unmarked path might lead you somewhere unexpected, forcing you to improvise, your memory frequently creates its own narrative to complete the story. Essentially, small details of the memory are altered every time you recall a memory you haven't thought about in a while. And with enough repetition of this process, it might create a completely false memory. Consider the famous Lost in the Mall experiment done by psychologist Elizabeth Loftus. This experiment demonstrated how our brain can confabulate or how a fake memory can be implanted through suggestion. In this experiment, participants were told that researchers talked to their older relatives. They were then given a booklet with four descriptions of their memories. Unbeknownst to them, three were real and one was a false memory about being lost in the mall. Then the participants were taken suggestive interviews about the false memory about being lost in the mall and were kind of asked or suggested to add more details to that memory. The results were pretty amusing. About 25% of the participants reported remembering the false memory, and the participants even added some embellishing details to the false memory. And that is why eyewitness testimony is not considered reliable on its own. Additionally, our brain can create the illusion of consciousness even when we are unconscious. For example, we don't generally realize we aren't unconscious when we are dreaming or in a coma. So, this begs the question, could you be unconscious right now? It is possible that you are currently dreaming all of this. Your brain could also be hallucinating this whole life that you are experiencing right now, and you would not even know if it's real or not. For all you know, you could have been in a coma for last 5 years, and your real life could have been very different from what you are experiencing right now. What we experience as reality is not objective reality, but a subjective experience of reality or perceived reality, as each of us might experience the world a little differently from others. We don't have to rely on hypothetical scenarios to understand the bizarreness of the human mind. Some of the actual medical conditions are stranger than fiction. You might be familiar with the mental health condition called dissociative identity disorder or DID insert, which is also commonly known as split personality. People with this condition have more than one distinct identity or multiple minds, if you will. And it is primarily associated with severe childhood trauma, leading their brain to compartmentalize traumatic memories into separate identities as a coping mechanism. It is like multiple people living in a single brain or body. Sometimes one identity takes control while other times other identity might be in control. Just imagine meeting a person with DID. One day they might introduce themselves as Mike, who treats you very politely like a gentle soul. And the next day they might act like a completely different person with aggressive and rude attitude who claims they are Simon and that they have never met you before. There was actually a 1978 criminal case in which a person named Billy Milligan was charged with multiple felonies, who was identified to have 24 distinct identities. And it was claimed that his other two personalities committed those crimes, not Milligan himself. And the surprising thing is, Milligan was actually acquitted based on the same claim and was instead committed to a psychiatric hospital. There are several movies and TV shows that show the bizarre nature of this condition. Off top of my head, the movie Fight Club and the Marvel series Moon Knight comes to my mind. I think Moon Knight does a pretty good job of portraying split personality, even if that's not the main focus of the story itself. While Milligan's condition is undeniably strange, the next condition might just make you suspect that I'm just making this up to, raise the stakes. But trust me, it's real. The condition is called depersonalization derealization disorder. Imagine feeling like a stranger in your own body and detached from your own body and thoughts. Instead of seeing the world through your eyes, it would feel like following your video game character. Patients often describe the sensation of floating like a ghost haunting their own physical form, except in this case, you are both the haunted and the ghost. Imagine seeing yourself from the third person perspective or like watching yourself in a movie, just like how a soul follows a body. It's even wild to imagine. The patient also report that they feel the reality like a dream sequence or a movie set. Their sense of time might also distort. They might see the world in maybe slow motion or maybe as if everything is fast forwarding. Instead, in this case, it is real, and for people living with this condition, it is a constant burden and inconvenience rather than a superpower. There is another neurological condition like split personality, but instead of having whole different identities, one of the patient's hand has a different personality. That is the reality of alien hand syndrome. It is a condition where one of the hands behave like a separate autonomous entity with a personality of its own. People with this syndrome lose control of their affected limb as if it is being controlled by some external force or as if it's being possessed. Just imagine that suddenly one of your own hands might be your enemy. While you are trying to smoke a cigarette, the alien hand might pluck the cigarette out of your mouth and toss it away. You try to vote for a Democrat candidate, and your alien hand wrestles with you to vote for a Republican candidate. There is even a documented case where the alien hand tried to strangle the owner, and another case where it was constantly slapping the owner, forcing them and their doctor to physically restrain their alien hand. This sounds like a comedy bit or scene from a horror movie, but guess what? These things have happened to real people in real life. There is another similar condition called split brain syndrome. Unlike other conditions, this is actually the result of a medical procedure called callosotomy. For severe drug resistant epilepsy, the nerve bundle called corpus callosum that connects the left and the right hemisphere of the brain is cut off to basically reduce the severity of the epileptic seizure. While this significantly helps with the seizure, it also causes a bizarre side effect. Essentially, it causes the brain to have two separate consciousness in the left and right part of the body simultaneously. Because the left side of the body is controlled by the right brain and the right side of the body is controlled by the left brain, the two halves of the person will be like stranger to each other. There's a chicken and snow shovel experiment developed by neurologist Michael Gazzaniga and Joseph Ledo that demonstrate the bizarreness of this condition. In this experiment, for a quick second, the patient is shown a snowy scene visible only to the left eye and a chicken claw only visible to the right eye at the same time. The patient is then shown a series of objects visible to both eyes and asked to point at the matching object. The left hand points to the shovel and the right hand points to the chicken. When the researchers asked the patient to explain their choices, the patient without hesitation responds, the chicken claw goes with the chicken and the shovel is used to clean the chicken coop. So, what is happening here? The right brain only knows about the snowy scene and the left brain only knows about the chicken claw. So when asked to point at matching items, each hands point at the correct items respectively. But since the speech is primarily controlled by the left brain, which does not have any information about the snowy scene, the left brain does not know why his left hand is pointing at the shovel. But instead of saying, I don't know, the brain immediately confabulates. In other words, it creates a false narrative to fill in the gap to justify its action. The patient says the shovel is for cleaning the chicken coop while the shovel was actually relevant to snow scene that the right brain does not know about. This is the proof of interpreter module of our brain. Basically, our brain has tendency to maintain coherent narrative even when there is not enough information. Think of it like a press secretary whose job is to make up excuses for what the rest of the brain has already done. Our brain is indeed very bizarre. There is also a rare neurological disorder called Anton-Babinski syndrome, in which the patient is cortically blind but basically unaware of their blindness. It means their eyes are intact, but due to problem in the brain, they cannot see. But instead of seeing nothing, the brain creates fake visual imagery. So the patient does not think they are blind. The patient will stumble and trip or even run into the wall, but instead of admitting that they cannot see, they will instead make excuses such as it was because of misplaced furniture or maybe because of poorly lit room. The thing is that the person is not lying, but instead their brain is lying to them that it's anything else but the inability to see. There is another somewhat similar neurological condition called Wernicke's aphasia, where the patient thinks they are meaningfully communicating, but they're actually speaking and writing mostly made up nonsensical words, also known as word salad. Although they can speak fluently, they aren't aware of the nonsensical and irrelevant words they are using. What's worse is when someone tries to communicate with them, all they hear is gibberish nonsense. Just imagine the frustration and loneliness. You are the only one who is making sense while everyone else is just talking gibberish and no one can understand you either. These are just few of many examples that demonstrate how truly bizarre our brain is, and it often makes me wonder if what I'm experiencing is same for other people or maybe just unique to me. So, after knowing about the bizarre mental conditions, what do you think about the distinction between you and your brain? Do you still think it's one and the same thing? When you decided to click on this episode, did you or your brain make that decision? Maybe your brain just decided to do it on its own and then created a narrative to why you decided to do it. So it can be argued that what we think of our conscious decision very well could be an illusion or an impression created by our brain to justify the decisions it made. Something like a figurehead for a shadow government. But if it is true, then it again begs the question, why do we even have consciousness in the first place? If consciousness is just an observer and doesn't really meaningfully contribute to our thought process, shouldn't natural selection have weeded it out? If energy consumption of a trait outweighs its benefits, then it would be detrimental to survival and evolution would definitely weed it out. But the fact is that we don't really know what consciousness really is and what kind of role it plays in our thought process. Some neurologists and philosophers hypothesize that consciousness could be a byproduct or emergent property of our neural activities. If it's just an unavoidable byproduct of an important brain functions, then it would explain why it was not eliminated by evolution. Think of it like a shadow. Where there is light, there is bound to be shadow. And shadow does not cost any energy, only the light source does. I also think consciousness could be something like the little brother who gets handed down a disconnected video game controller. While the older brother is actually playing the game, the little brother keeps smashing the buttons on the controller, thinking he's also playing the game. Let's do a simple experiment. Move your hand and fingers in some weird way, like making a fist or flexing your fingers and then releasing it. In that moment, what actually triggered the movement? Did your conscious will acted as the commander that sent an order to your brain to fire electrical signals into your muscles? Or was it your brain that just made your hands and fists do it and then made you believe that it was your will? This raises the issue of free will. And personally, I don't think we actually have free will. What we experience as free will could be another illusion created by the brain. The brain probably makes decisions based on the environmental stimuli and inputs that we're exposed to. But it makes us think our conscious choice made that decision out of our own free will. Let's think of the brain and body as a complex organic robot. Our body is constantly experiencing many physical stimuli and sensory inputs such as light, sound, smell, gravity, etc. We are also experiencing other complex environmental factors such as people interacting with us, objects like ceiling fans spinning, wind blowing, etc. All of these factors stimulate the numerous neural network inside the brain in certain ways depending on how our brain is wired. These stimuli also further affect the wiring of the brain. The way our brain is wired significantly makes a difference in how the stimuli causes our brain to make certain decisions. Think of it like a ski mountain. The terrain of the mountain, thickness, and the iciness of the snow makes the difference on the skiing experience. And at the same time, the more people ski there, the thickness and the iciness of the snow changes, which further changes the skiing experience. The way our neurons are wired is shaped by our genetics, past experiences, the environment we grew up in, and our memories. So, numerous stimuli from our environment combined with memories, habitual patterns, and past experiences leads to our brain into making certain decisions like feeling angry when your friend jokes about your favorite football team, or remembering the time you got food poisoning when you eat an awful tasting food, or your heart beating faster when you watch a horror movie, or something reflexive like moving a hand to catch a ball hurling towards your face. Brain can make different decisions based on something as strange as distance between earth and sun to something as simple as listening to different genre of music. I just realized that I might have come off as a horoscope enthusiast. Trust me, I'm not. The point I was trying to make was that even the tiniest thing can affect our thought process. So it is possible that the decisions we think we are making out of our own free will could be a result of this computer like mechanism, input, process, and output. And the brain's tendency to create coherent narrative could have given rise to the feeling or the impression of free will. This isn't just based on my speculation and philosophy. There is a little bit of scientific basis for this claim as well, although the basis is not very strong. Let me explain this as briefly as I can. In 1980s, Benjamin Levy conducted a neurological experiment that basically revealed that the unconscious brain activity or readiness potential of brain begins few milliseconds before the person becomes consciously aware of their intentions to make a simple voluntary movement. This basically challenged the traditional view of free will, as the experiment suggested that our brain might decide the action even before we become aware of the feeling of the decision making. But Levy's experiment is not conclusive evidence of lack of free will, as Levy himself suggested that our consciousness could still have the veto power to intervene or stop the decision made by our unconscious part of the brain. Also, later criticisms about the experiment have questioned the accuracy of the measurement of the subjective intentions and also have been suggested that readiness potential could only mean brain's decision making process rather than a finalized decision. So the jury is still out on free will. Let's take a stroll through a speculative road. What if a character in a video game you are playing thinks they are real? When you press buttons in your game controller, the character will climb off their horse, go to the ledge of the cliff, light a cigar, and then stare at the beautiful country below. What if the character thinks they decided off their own free will to climb off the horse, walk to the ledge of the cliff, light the cigar, and enjoy the great view? The character might even be thinking that the weather is wonderful and the vantage point has a great view. And they might even be feeling grateful to be born into the world to enjoy that moment. The character might think whatever they are doing is of their own free will, while in actuality, an external agent or the player is controlling the character and making decisions for them. The world that the character is living in is just a digital recreation, but to that character, it might just be real. What if it is the similar case for us? We could be a character in a video game that someone else is playing, and what we feel as free will could also be the players controlling our actions using game controller. Even if we were really in a video game or a simulation, we would not be able to tell if we are real or just a simulation. But more importantly, I don't think it would make much of a difference as long as the simulation runs smoothly. To get to the real nitty gritty, how can we even define something as real? You know, does being a simulated consciousness make it any less real than being a sentient organic robot? I believe that as long as something is happening within the same plane of existence as us, it is real for us, no matter the nature of our reality. Everything in that reality is real to you as far as that reality exists or as long as you exist within that reality. I mean, until you are born or after you are dead, nothing really matters, right? Similarly, the plane of existence is real until it ceases to exist. So, if you are inside a digital game and if things are happening within that digital world, then that is real for you until the game is unplugged or reset. Likewise, if you only exist as a character in someone's dream, then anything happening within that dream is real for you until that dreamer wakes up from the dream. Well, these are just my speculations, so take it with a big grain of salt. Let's ponder something more abstract. When you look at something, who actually sees it? And what does seeing something mean in the biological sense? This may sound very trivial, but let me try to elaborate on it. When you look at the portrait of Mona Lisa, the light rays bounce from the portrait enters your eyes and it hits the retina, which stimulates optical nerves that sends the signal to our brain. And in the visual cortex of our brain, the signals are processed and interpreted to form an image in our mind. But when you experience the subjective feeling of seeing the image, what is actually happening is neurons firing in certain pattern in the visual cortex of our brain. So how does neurons firing some electrical charges in our brain causes us to experience the subjective feeling of seeing something? It is almost impossible to conceive this notion, as it transcends the scientific thought process and hops to the metaphysical realm. This is called the hard problem of consciousness. We know that neural activity causes qualia or subjective experiences, but we don't know how and why. There is this gap in our understanding between the connection of physical brain and our mind. There is also this physical thought experiment called inverted spectrum of qualia, which proposes that two people could have systematically opposite color experiences. For example, what if what I see as red in my mind is actually green, and what I see as green is actually red? There could be a red rose with green stem, but in my mind, I could be seeing it as a green rose with a red stem. But since in my mind all red is inverted to green and vice versa, and ever since I was a kid, I have learned to call the color experience as red, even though I actually have been seeing green color in my mind. Neither I nor anyone else can know or verify what I refer to as red is actually green in my mind. And this could be true for all of us. Your qualia or your subjective experience are only known to you. So you cannot actually know or verify how another person actually experiences that same qualia. The more you think about it, the more baffling it gets. Also, let's entertain the classic idea of mind body dualism as a thought experiment. What if our consciousness is some metaphysical entity existing only as a mind that is capable of connecting to and controlling the conscious part of the physical brain? Think of it like an operating system, which is a separate and independent set of programs that can be installed on computer hardware to bring a full computing experience. A computer hardware without software is just an electrical machine that produces arbitrary heat, sound, and light. And also, the software without being installed on a hardware has no way to express itself or interact with the world. Also, think about how the same copy of operating system can be installed in many compatible hardwares. Once the operating system is installed on a computer hardware, that specific computer starts to evolve into something unique. Just like how people are all unique in some ways with their physical appearances, thought process, memories, and feelings. But more importantly, they will accumulate a unique history. For example, they will have different files, specific folders, cache logs, and memory allocation. Basically, making every computer unique in its own right, defined by specific way its hardware is utilized and the way it has gathered data. So, similarly, when we are born, we might also come pre installed with the same copy of the consciousness that evolves with time and experience to create our unique individuality. But what would it be like being a different person instead of you? You know, would you feel the same feeling of individuality that you are feeling now if you were born in a different body? Well, I think no. Our individuality is the combination of our past experiences, memories, and genetics. So if you are born in a different body, then you definitely have a different combinations of experiences, memories, and genetics. Therefore, you won't feel the same individuality or that I feeling you have now. I mean, think about it. You don't even feel the same feeling of individuality compared to your younger self because your mentality is always evolving with new experiences. Only because of your memory of past, some core principles and values of your identity are preserved that prevents your identity from taking drastic and abrupt turns. If you were to lose your memory, then you turn into a completely different person. And if you are the result of a certain arrangement of atoms, then after you die, if you are reconstructed perfectly down to every single atom, would that reconstruction feel the same you feeling or that you feeling is gone forever once you die? Conversely, could you have been a reconstruction of a past individual? Like if your original body was destroyed and you were 3D printed, then would you know that you are a reconstruction or would you remain completely oblivious to the fact that you are just a copy? If you love this kind of philosophical speculations, then I'm pretty sure you will love the short story The Egg by Andy Weir. And with that, I think we're at the end of this episode. I hope you guys found this episode interesting. I will leave you with this existential enigma. Catch you guys in the next one. Until then, sayonara, fellow Earthicans.